Hello and welcome back to the Big News Coming Soon podcast. And this week I'm delighted to be just outside Castlebar. And I think this is my first outdoor podcast. And I'm delighted to be with Paraic Horkan. Paraic, thanks for...
Alan, you're very welcome.
I spent probably 10 minutes outside with Paul Stenson on the beach, but we're going to be outside for the entirety of this podcast.
Well, semi-outside. We're kind of semi-covered
in your garden room.
We've got the heater on, the lights on, but we're outside in the garden, yeah.
And a lot of people might recognise this because you spent a lot of time in here during lockdown.
I did. I built this just at COVID because I was working with TV3, with R&DM at the time. And rather than travelling up and down to Dublin, I said, I'll build a studio, I suppose, effectively, an outdoor garden studio. And we use this to broadcast all the programmes live.
Yeah.
So the guys were talking from the studios in Dublin down here, live over the internet. And it worked a treat.
So describe this little room for us, for people who can't see it.
So this is a PALRAM. It's a PALRAM unit. It's roughly 20 feet by, I think, 10 feet. It's a steel structure, polycarbonate roof, and I clad it then in cedar wood, which is a hardwood. It'll withstand all the elements. And so you get the nice shelter and protection, but you're still outdoors. Yeah. That feeling of outdoors, isn't there?
Yeah.
And the windows, you can look out into the garden, you can hear the birds singing in the background. And but it's a lovely spot. I come out here to read or to listen to podcasts or just have a cup of coffee. I might be out working in the garden, want to take 10 minutes. I come in here, sit back.
It's so peaceful. And even the fire here in the middle, that's gas, is it?
That's a gas fire,
What's causing the spitting sound?
There's probably little bits of debris.
Oh, okay. I thought that was part of the effect.
I haven't lived in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
so
there was a bird in a nest.
It probably needs a good hoovering out. But yeah, I've got some lighting, some extra heating in it, and it's lovely. And we do some cooking as well. We've got the barbecues there as well, which are great. So
it's a dream outdoor.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. I'd recommend it to anyone.
Yeah. Let's go right back to the start, Paraic. Tell me a little bit about yourself and where you grew up.
Well, I often think that the life we lead is based on two things. First of all, the family you're born into, and secondly, the generation that you're born into as well. So I was lucky enough to be born into the Horkan family in 1964, that long ago. And I think of the generations that are born, from the 2000s on, that are struggling with house prices, with social media and so on. So I feel fortunate to be born in 1964. I was born in Spencer Street in Castlebar. And my dad and mum had a grocery business. And we lived above the grocery shop. At every second door on any street in Castlebar, there was some sort of business. Butcher, baker, whatever.
Sweet shop,
loads of sweet shops. Yeah. The barber shop, all that, all down along Spencer Street. And we were a typical family at the time. There was 8 of us in family, 4 boys, 4 girls, mum and dad. So 10 of us lived above the shop in Spencer Street. To our left, Dr. Tobin's family lived. There was 12 in that family, plus the mum and dad. 14 people lived in that house. And just down the road, Richard King had King's Pub, famous pub. He had 13 children, plus the mum and dad. That was 15 living in that house. So at 8:30 any morning, there was at least 100 kids coming out onto Spencer Street.
Wow.
Oh, can you imagine at the time?
Yeah.
Because all the families, the McDermotts, the Campbells, all the way along the Lineses, the Rogers, they all lived above their shops.
And you wouldn't even see that in a housing estate now. You wouldn't see 100 kids.
No. So 100 kids would come out onto Spencer Street and everybody walked to school. And outside John Hanley's at Market Square, there'd be a queue of 30 kids because the girls' school was right beside John Hanley's. So everybody went in for their pencils and their copies and so on. And every street was the same. Castle Street was the same, Main Street was the same, Market Square was the same, all the little streets around. It was a hive of activity back in I suppose it was the late 60s, early 70s when I went to
It's fascinating because that street now, obviously we know it so well, is so quiet now.
It's derelict.
Yes.
There's very, very few people living on the street in Spencer Street. There were 7 pubs in my day. There's probably only 1 pub now.
Yeah.
So it was a hive of activity and Castlebar was very much a market town. It was a business town. Lots of business being done in all the various different shops and so on. So I went to primary school with the Christian Brothers. I then went to St. Gerald's back and at the time you had St. Gerald's or you had the Tech College. And
So did Paraic Flynn teach you as well?
Paraic Flynn taught me in primary school.
Yes.
And he was a fantastic teacher.
It's funny you should say that because I had Frank Ford on the podcast last season and he had just the best things to say about
He
it.
was a terrific teacher. He was so enthusiastic. He had the sunflower at the time. And because Paraic was so tall, he had a bar stool. One of the bar stools from
What was
the
the
pub.
Sunflower for people?
Sunflower was a pub
Yeah.
in Castlebar, and Paraic owned that with his family and worked there after school and then came in to teach us the following morning. But he used to sit on a bar stool and talk to the class. Yeah. And of course, around 2 o'clock in the day, Paraic would start to nod off because he was working so hard at night time. But he was a terrific teacher, one of the best teachers I think I had right through my education.
Yeah.
So I went to St. Gerald's. I suppose academically, what I've learned about myself is that I learn through doing. So I'm a doer. I like practical. I like work. I like working with my hands. And really, the St. Gerald's School didn't suit me. That's my excuse anyway.
Yeah.
It didn't suit my learning ability. It was really when I went to the Botanic Gardens in Dublin. That's when because in the Botanic Gardens, you had to work for half the day and you studied for half the day. So it was that practical thing of digging and planting and pruning and whatever. And then you went into studies in the afternoon. And the combination of the both suited. I absolutely loved my time in the Botanic Gardens. So.
But it's interesting because I went to St. Gerald's as well, you know, and I felt the same as you. I know, and I didn't know that we had that in common.
Yeah.
I just felt it didn't suit me.
My poor mother used to be sent to the parent-teacher meetings because she drove. My dad doesn't drive. So she was sent, and she'd be gone for maybe 2 or 3 hours back to St. Charles to the parent-teacher meeting. And she'd come home to my father and she'd say, Sean, what are we going to do with Paraic?
Oh, really?
What's ever going to become of Paraic? So years later, they moved from Castlebar out to Turlock when we built the garden centre. And I used to go in for a cup of coffee on a Monday and we'd be having the chat, Mum and Dad and myself. And she'd come to this, I was working with Pat Kenny on News Talk at the time, and she'd come around to that conversation. She'd say to me, Paraic, what are you talking to Pat about this week on the programme? And I'd say to her, Sean, what's ever going to become of Paraic?
That's brilliant.
So
did that bother you when you were younger?
Not at all. No,
really?
No. Well, I had no great grow for. I suppose I didn't try either. So I came out with a very basic intercert and leaving cert. And thankfully at the time, to get into the Botanic Gardens, it was all based on an interview. So 600 people would apply. I think it's still 600 people would apply every year for 30 places. And what the guys in the Botanic Gardens were looking for were people that were going to go back into the industry. Because you have a lot of people that would do the course more as a hobby than anything else. Whereas they were really looking for people that would go back into horticulture and into gardening. And at the time, Dad had changed the shop. It used to be a typical supermarket, and he started selling gardening items, lawnmowers, chainsaws, all that kind of thing. So I was able to kind of link, in my interview, be able to say, look, we have a small semi-established garden centre. I'll be going back after I qualify. And that's really the reason I got in there. The other great thing was you were paid to go to college.
Okay.
So there was a grant of 35 punts every week. We were paid by cheque. We used to cash it in the Addison Lodge pub across the road. And at the time, now you're talking the early 80s, my rent for the week was £12. So I had 23 punts to spend in Dublin during that period. And I also, the Botanic Gardens was a great place for nixers to come in. People around Dublin would ring in looking for a student to come out and prune their roses or prune their apple trees or whatever. So I got a beautiful class job every Saturday for a client in South County Dublin for £20. And all he wanted me to do was cut his lawn, cut the grass. And his wife used to make me a fabulous fry at 12 o'clock. So I'd go out at 8, I'd finish at 12, I'd have the fry, and we'd, that was an extra 20 quid. So
now, you're saying if you got £20, that must have been a lot of grass there, Paraic.
Well, it was a 4-hour gig. It was a fiver an hour. But it was, it was a terrific time for me because, you have a few quid, really enjoy the time in the Botanic Gardens. It really set me up well. And then I came back to Castlebar in the early 80s to establish the garden centre. It started off. But at that time, in the 80s, there was no money around. Most of the people in my class at the time had immigrated, had gone somewhere else. And really, I struggled for the first year trying to establish the business, because really gardening wasn't established in the west of Ireland. It was really a British thing.
Okay.
The UK was big on gardening. They had the gardening programs that promoted gardening really well. It wasn't in Ireland, apart from Dublin, it wasn't really seen as a...
So roughly what year did you come back then?
I came back in 83,
Right.
in 1983.
And do you mind me asking then, what kind of things were your siblings doing? Or had any of them an interest in horticulture?
Yeah, no, we all grew up through the business. Our dad was a great man for giving us a job. So after school, you were into the shop, you were cycling messenger bikes, you were stacking shelves, you were pricing goods, working on the baking counter. Typical, and every family was the same that ran a business. The kids were involved very much in growing up. John and Thomas, who were only 11 months younger than I am, John went to hotel management, degree in hotel management, and Thomas did engineering. And nobody really else had a grow for the gardening. I got that really from my dad's family. From his mother was a great gardener. She had a grocery shop before Sean took it over, before Dad and Mum took it over.
In that building?
In that building.
Okay.
And she used to grow her own plants.
Wow.
From seed, yeah. Her husband was a plumber by trade. He worked in the St. Mary's in the mental hospital, and he was over the plumbing and the heating there. So he built her greenhouses out of the windows that came out of St. Mary's at the back of the garden centre, where the original garden centre was, right? And he had all the plumbing pipes set up, so she had all heating for germinating the seeds and growing her own plants. So she used to grow the plants and then sell them through the shop.
She was ahead of her time.
Ahead of her time, it really was.
Yeah.
And because of the heat, she was able to grow grapes in the greenhouses and peaches and nectarines. So she had some kind of exotic fruits that she'd sell through the shop as well. So she was way ahead of her time. So we grew up with that because we lived right beside them, so Dad
I'm absolutely fascinated by that.
Dad took over her shop, and he had a grow for gardening as well, and all his family have. And he kept that tradition going, growing the plants and selling, broadening then into doing other things. So when I came back, trying to establish the garden centre was difficult because people were looking for bushes,
Okay.
not shrubs.
Yeah.
So the business was very much kind of March to maybe June. So I actually applied for my Australian visa. I was going to head to Australia and immigrate myself. And RTE put on the programme The Outdoor Room with Jerry Daly, just at that point in the early 80s. So Jerry Daly had a TV programme showing people how to garden, and he also had a radio programme on a Saturday answering gardening questions. Next thing, gardening took off.
Wow.
So whatever Jerry Daly said, if he talked about sweet peas or roses or fruit trees, people were in the following day, have you got? And it had to be the variety. If it was a particular rose that he named, you had to have that one.
Because Jerry said so.
Because Jerry said so. So what I learned from that was the power of the media. And as Donald Trump says, whoever controls the media controls the message.
Don't mention the whore today.
So
we get cancelled.
It was a great learning for me.
Yeah.
And Midwest Radio was starting at the time. So I went to Paul Clarke and I talked to him I had the example of Jerry Daly and how successful the gardening program was for him. So Midwest Radio was a pirate radio station at the time. They had a little, in the cloakroom in the Midas nightclub, myself and John Duggan used to do a gardening program on a Thursday evening, every Thursday evening. I used to bring in the questions because there was nobody there to take any phone calls. There was no WhatsApp, there was no emails.
You made up the questions.
We had the questions, and I would pick questions that were kind of typical or topical at the time.
A lot.
Yeah. And John and I would have a conversation over, he'd ask the questions, we'd share the mic would be pushed from me to him.
Yeah.
And that's how I started.
There was only a budget for one microphone.
That was it.
Yeah.
It was a tiny little room. And so that's how I started in Midwest. And next thing, people started coming, oh, I heard you on Midwest Radio, have you got such and such a thing? And then when Midwest Radio got their license for Sligo and Ballyhonus, I was doing a programme with Tommy Martin on Tuesday. So Tommy would ring me from Sligo. So the gardening programme was broadcast from Donegal all the way down to Galway. So we had a huge listenership. Next thing, the business took off. And during that time, my two brothers, John and Tomas, and my sister Mairead, joined the business. So John had done his hotel management, so he brought that kind of structure in terms of accountancy, good management practices, all that good stuff. Tomas had his engineering degree, so he was very good at the building of new stores and the layout of stores. And Mairead was a qualified florist.
Wow.
So we all, so the skills, and I had the horticulture.
Yeah.
So the skills of each of the four of us really was the magic ingredient. It wasn't just my skills. It was what was very important was the whole management side of it as well, and being able to build garden centres.
And of course, you're all family, so there's a vested interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then because of the Midwest Sligo, we started looking at Sligo for a store. So that was our first store. We built we started a second garden centre in Sligo on the Bundorden Road. We're still there, still trading. And then we went to Lydican in Galway. So they were our first three stores. And we're still in Spencer Street at that time, trading out of Spencer Street. But Spencer Street, as people know, there's no parking. So there was only room for 4 or 5 cars. So we were causing problems really on the street with deliveries and the business was beginning to, it was constrained in terms of being able to develop. But one thing we did do was put in a little pet store in the Spencer Street. And the amount of people that would come on a Sunday, families in particular, that would come to the pet shop, even in the winter time.
I was one of them.
Loads of families came.
Yes.
They loved seeing the rabbits and the hamsters and all the birds and so on. So that was a big part. And so we decided that as well as the garden centres, we'd diversify into the pet business. So today we have 3 garden centres and 12 pet stores. And they're in Dublin, in Galway, in Mullingar, Portlaoise, Lope, all around the country. So the pets is actually a bigger part of our business than the garden centres. We have 3 garden centres and 12 pet stores. But it works really, really well together. And then the big move was really moving out to Turlough, out on the N5. And people told us if we went out there, they wouldn't come out to us.
Oh, really?
Our customers were telling us that they wanted to, they loved it in town, they loved the kind of intimacy of the thing, but it was, we needed to move.
And it was hugely successful.
It was, thankfully, because we went out and we bought a 10-acre site, got planning permission for it. It has cost us 4 or 5 million in terms of investment. Each of our houses had to be put up as collateral. So we were on the hook. If it didn't work, that was it. It was game over, houses and all. And
they're the stories you don't hear. You just think, oh, sure, look, they went out there and it was an overnight success.
No. The banks put a lien on all anything that we had as an asset, including our private homes. So they were up for grabs. But it has been very successful, and we built it in a number of stages. Stage 1, we built physically the garden centre and the pet centre, and straight away people started asking us about, have you not got a coffee shop? We're going to get a cup of coffee. So we had to go back for planning, build the coffee shop and the restaurant. And Edinburgh Wool Mills then joined us from the UK. They were part of that move. They're with us 15 years. And recently then we've got planning permission to build extra. And we have a number of Regatta being one of them, have joined us. We have Pond and Home. And we have a number of new concessions on the site, which just makes the whole centre work better because it takes the seasonality out of the gardening business, which tends to be busy March to September, quieter in the winter, whereas with the other concessions, it just smooths that out. And it gives a clear reason for people to travel from Sligo and Roscommon and Galway and all over to come. People will drive an hour and a half to come to Horkans in Turlough.
So in the early days, you're looking at this business and you're saying, right, it's busy March to September.
Yeah.
Was there always a struggle to fill the other months to, keep things ticking over?
Absolutely. Well, thankfully the pets, and as a pet owner, the dog or the cat has to be fed 12 months of the year, thankfully. Yeah. So the beauty about the pet business is that it's a very consistent, steady trade, month in, month out, and it's not affected by weather. And so on. And you get a couple of peaks at Christmas and at Easter, but apart from that, it's a very, very stable business. Same with the restaurant business. People have to eat. So we had looked in the UK, we'd gone to the UK and to Europe to look what other leading garden centres were doing in terms of broadening out that season. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what they were doing. They were adding restaurants, they were putting wool. Edinburgh Wool Mills is a classic example. They have hundreds of stores in garden centres right throughout the UK and here in Ireland as well. So they're not just in Horkans, they're, and they target garden centres because that's their customer. It tends to be a slightly older customer. So it was very important, and for the success of the Turlock Centre in particular, because of the investment that was going in, we needed to have other concessions there to bring footfall and to even out that seasonality of the business.
Yes.
But the radio station was very important as well. And here's a good story. Like I was on Midwest for maybe 20 years, and one Monday morning I got a phone call from a lady called, and I'll never forget her name, Kelvina Pinkleton was her name.
You forget that name?
And she said to me that she was home. She was a lady from Sligo, and she was home to visit her mom. She arrived on a Saturday morning and knocked on the door. The mom opened it and she says, "Be quiet, I'm listening to the gardening programme."
Really?
So Kelvina Pinkleton was the lady that hired me for Ireland AM on TV3. So she heard the programme on Saturday morning and said, "We need a gardener." She gave me the call and I got the gig in Ireland AM. Same thing happened with RTE. Regina Hennelly was home to visit her dad in Balcarra, or Balcarra area. And Regina she worked on the Sean O'Rourke radio programme. Same thing, she was home to see her dad on a Saturday. He was listening to the gardening programme.
Yeah.
Told her to hush for a couple of minutes. And she rang me the following Monday to see that we're looking for a gardener for RTE.
That is fascinating.
I got those two gigs out of
parents being glued to the radio.
Glued to the Midwest radio. So at the time I was doing Midwest radio, I was doing Sean O'Rourke's programme on RTE, I was doing Ireland AM, TV3. I used to leave here at 4:30 in the morning, drive to Dublin. I'd do the gig on live on TV, then drive to RTE, do the gig with them, and drive home.
Did that all happen by chance, Paraic, or did you want to be a kind of a media mogul for the horticulture industry?
What I'm passionate about is gardening. I love talking about gardening, and I never have a problem when people come up to me in the pub or anywhere and they're asking me a gardening question. It's the same gardening question that I get asked all the time. It never bothers me. I like talking about gardening. I like giving that knowledge to people. If I can pass on something to somebody and they in turn are successful with that makes my day.
Okay.
So that was always the interest.
Yeah, you were never looking for it was never about the money.
No. Well, our dad, our dad brought us up. I mean, he and Mum had never any interest in money. Very, it was all about putting it back into the business. Same with my brothers, and with my sister Mairead and myself. It's never about the money. I still drive a caddy van.
Yeah.
I have one house.
There's a great lesson in that, isn't there?
There is. It's never about that. For us, it was always about
the passion.
Putting it back into the business, reinvesting. Like when you think of it, Alan, we have probably 180 people working in the company at the moment. That's 180 families. Mm-hmm. Some of those people are with us 30 years, working with us. Yeah. So we've lots of long-term team members that are very important to us, and it's all about putting it back into the business. That's always been our motto. So,
what would be the top 3 questions you're always asked?
Well, the most popular question I get asked is how to prune a hydrangea.
Really?
Every year, and I've answered it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. It's probably the most popular garden plant that people have in their garden, the big mop head hydrangeas, and there's a particular time of year that you prune them back. But it depends on the season. This time of year in early spring, people are asking about colour for Easter, for example, for St. Patrick's Day. On last week's programme was all about pruning, or what to prune at this time of year. Seed potatoes, what's your favourite variety type of thing.
I remember when we worked together briefly in Midwest, was there a potato blight? Was there some sort of...
Well, you would have potato blight warnings during the season, Met Éireann.
Every year?
Every year.
Okay.
Every year you get your memory doesn't go back to the fan.
No.
But in wet years, blight is a problem. So blight is spread on the spores of moisture spores. So you get a wet summer, blight is going to be a problem. But nowadays there are blight resistant varieties. So they've bred, even in Ireland has one of the best research centres in Teagasc. They've bred some of the best blight-resistant varieties that are absolutely superb. I grow them every year myself.
Okay.
And really what I say to people on the programme is, don't be growing the potatoes that you can buy in the shop. You can buy a Rooster or a Curse Pink or a Golden Wonder any day of the week for small money. And they're beautifully grown. Grow varieties that you just won't get in the greengrocer. So they're lovely varieties like Francis and Vitabella. You'll never get them to buy in a supermarket shop. But grow those varieties because they're different and they're bred for flavour and there's something different about them.
What has been your biggest lesson in business?
Well, for us, it's all about the people. It's all about the team, really. I mean, at the end of the day, we cannot be with 15 stores. You cannot be in all the stores all of the time. But it's for me, it's about the team, having really, really good people, team members that are passionate, that pass on the knowledge. And we're very lucky to have that, So it's, and I was always, when I worked in the business, I would always keep cards in my pocket. And if I went into a store, I've done it many times, and I got really, really good service, I'd offer the person a job there and then.
Yes.
Even if we didn't have a job for them. Because that customer service is very, very rare.
Yeah.
It's hard to get. So when you see exceptionally good customer care, I hand them my ticket and say, I have a job for you. So we've got loads of team members just in that simple way.
Me and you are so similar, and I didn't know that until today, because I have the same mentality as you. And there's a particular young gentleman who I won't name just because I'm not sure if he'd want to be named, but he's working in a coffee shop in Castlebar and he's 17 years of age. And he is the best young fella I have ever seen.
There you go.
And I went into the coffee shop and I was there about 2 weeks ago, and I said to the owner was there, I said, do you realise what you have in this young man?
Yeah.
And he said, I definitely do.
Oh, good.
I definitely do.
Yeah. And they're so rare to get.
And I thought to myself,
Yeah.
is there anything I could set up and try and
bring him
that
with
young
you?
fella?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the success lies an awful lot on that. You're having really, really talented people that are passionate about what they're doing and that are going to go the extra mile. And the customers come back from that.
Yes.
Come back day after day for that, So I would hear on a regular basis from customers, I was down with Leonie, I was down with whoever, that mentioned the staff member by name. And that was terrific, a great service there, and
Yeah. And I'm testament to that, because I remember I had a fish tank about 10 years ago, and I bought all my fish in Horkans, and there was a man working in Horkans, and I used to look forward to going out to him at the weekend for his knowledge.
For the chat,
and expanding the fish tank.
Yeah.
And he'd say to me, I'd say to him, I'm after finding this fish and I'd love this one. He'd talk me out of it.
Okay.
And
it wasn't suitable.
It was for sale in his tank, but he'd talk me out of it and say, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Go with this one or that one.
Yeah.
And you can't buy that.
Yeah, and that's a value within our company. Like, for example, we have a 5-year plant guarantee. So on any plant that should come back year after year, we guarantee it for 5 years. Whether you put it upside down or you kill it with weed killer.
Really?
And our philosophy is, first of all, if we fail to give you the advice, so if we've sold you a plant that's not suitable for your location, then that's our fault, not your fault.
Okay.
And also, like, if a plant dies in you, we're happier that you come back with a dead plant, and we'll give you a new one. And it's an opportunity to go through exactly how to look after that plant. Is it suitable in the first place?
Yeah.
So 5-year guarantee, and we get very few plants back.
Right.
Because the staff take on that, giving the right advice, making sure they'll question you to make sure it's the right plant, right location, give you some care tips with it, and that's kind of our philosophy. 5-year guarantee in any plant. I mean, generally a plant will die within the first 6 months if it's going to die.
Yeah.
We will guarantee it for 5 years.
Isn't it fascinating how you said at the start there that it started off like a real British thing?
Yeah, gardening.
Yeah. And isn't there a plant that's a weed all over Achill? That
there's
started
as
it
Gunnera.
started in a show in England.
Well, loads of plants. That's the problem. We've got so many invasive species now in Ireland. So the plant you're talking about is Gunnera, or wild rhubarb.
Oh, yes.
And it looks like a rhubarb, like a big, huge.
And when you're driving to Achill during the summer, it's
Absolutely.
all along the road.
It dies away in the winter completely, and then re-emerges every spring and summer. It's very, very hard to kill. But that was a plant that was imported It was in some of the best gardens in the UK.
Yes.
Escaped, seeded itself, and particularly areas like Achill where it's mild, you've got a mild winter, you've got boggy soil, it just loves those locations and it spreads like mad.
It's fascinating because it goes for miles.
Oh, it does, absolutely.
And once upon a time, people were paying for that, like because it was a show winner.
It was a show winner.
Yeah.
Rhododendron is the same. Rhododendron ponticum, the wild rhododendron with the purple flowers you see all over Achill, that's an invasive species.
Okay.
You've got a weed, I'll think of it now in a second,
Okay.
but there's another one that just spreads mad as well.
Fascinates me.
Yeah, and they were
What's trending?
Japanese knotweed is what I'm trying to think of.
The council had to go along spraying all that.
That was actually brought from Japan to Wales, and they used to plant it along the mines. So after the mining, there was so much loose shale all along the mines that they wanted something to stabilise, to stop the shale from slipping. So they planted Japanese knotweed. And of course, it grew so vigorously. It did a great job in stabilising the banks, but unfortunately, any piece of it, if you throw it on the ground, it'll grow.
Yes.
And it's spread, and it's now in Ireland, all over Ireland. And the council are on top of it now.
What was so dangerous about that, or why did the council have to get involved?
Because it grows from literally nothing. So it disappears in the winter, and it'll grow 5-6 metres in 1 year. It spreads by underground stems, and the underground stems will come up through concrete.
Wow.
So if you've got it on your plot of land and you're building a house, the chances are it's going to come up. If you Google it, you'll see images of it in sitting rooms.
Wow.
Shooting up. It's like asparagus. It's got these very watery shoots, but they literally will pierce up through tarmac, macadam, concrete, gravel, anything like that, and it spreads like mad.
The only reason I know that is because where I go walking in the evenings, the council have signs up.
Japanese knotweed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually one that you need to report, and it's a criminal offence if you do anything to propagate it. So if you're cutting it back, that's spreading it. So
Right.
you can end up in court.
Yeah.
So there are lots of examples. The Himalayan balsam is another one. It's a variety of busy lizzie, and that again has become invasive in Ireland. So we're seeing these invasive plants that were ornamental at some stage, and because of their vigour have spread.
Another thing I find absolutely fascinating about you and the radio show is that it never declined. Even with all that's available now, Google, ChatGPT, the show is as busy as ever.
It's as busy as ever. I mean, last Saturday I walked away from the studio with 50 or 60 questions we didn't get to. So the guys are saying to me in studio, you have to be faster, you have to be quicker, you have to be shorter answers, you have to get... But you have to give people the detail as well. There's no yes and no answers to the garden. But it's still as popular. We're still getting... And WhatsApp has been actually great because listeners are now sending in photographs. So we're actually seeing their garden, we're seeing the plants. So it's not just a vague question.
Yeah.
They're actually sending in images. So last week we had a plant called the Helleborus. Somebody saw it down in Tipperary, I think, and wondered would it grow here in the west of Ireland. But they were able to send me in the picture of the plant. And
Are there plants that will only grow in different parts of Ireland?
Well, that particular plant, Helleborus, I have actually grown in my own garden. It grows fantastically here in the west of Ireland. So they hadn't seen it before. So no, in general, most plants will grow. Of course, it's wetter here.
Yes.
It's more bit windier. If you're living in South County Dublin, you can grow the olive trees and you can grow something a little bit different. I mean, they're growing grapes in Wexford at the moment.
But sure, your grandmother was growing them.
Well, she was growing them in a glasshouse.
Okay.
Whereas there are now commercial vineries in Wexford and Waterford because the climate has changed. It's got that little bit milder. So they're commercially able to make wine in Waterford.
Irish
20 years
wine.
ago, that didn't happen. Yeah. So definitely the climate is changing, and we're seeing plants. I was out for a walk this morning. I was down through Museum of Country Life, and I was looking at some planters of plants that should have died over the winter, but they're coming back again because we've had such a mild winter.
You didn't see, for people who are outside of Mayo, you didn't see that Newport, a place only 20 minutes over the road from us, was the wettest town in Ireland last year.
There you go.
Was it 265 days of rain?
There you go. So it's getting wetter, it's getting milder. We're not seeing those colds, the distinction between spring and autumn and winter. We don't have that, it's pretty much the same temperatures nearly.
The same miserable rain all the time.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest change or difference you've seen in retail over the years?
Well, in the gardening business, I mean, it has just transformed completely. You know, like I said, I came out of the Botanic Gardens in the early '80s, and gardening just wasn't done. People had a green lawn, had maybe a bit of a hedge, and that was it. There was a certain amount of grow your own going on, farmers growing, you know, vegetables for use in the home, but it has completely transformed in the short 40 years that I've been in horticulture. Yeah. So it's now a thing. People take pride in their gardens. They want them looking really well. They invest in structures like this, in furniture, in patios, and so on. So there's been a tremendous change in people being house proud and garden proud. And COVID was the best thing that happened to gardening. It really, people that never gardened. Mm-hmm. So when I was working in Newstalk, the team up for Pat Kenny are very young. They're very young, they were in their 20s. Every one of them, anytime I came in, they had a list of questions for me. How do I grow herbs and how do I do this? And so we saw this young group of people getting into gardening during COVID. So COVID has been terrific to grow the business, mm-hmm. because it tended to be an older customer. It tended to be people over 50 that were into gardening, whereas COVID actually brought a whole new generation into houseplants and herbs and grow your own. Grow your own has been phenomenal in the last 10 years. The amount of people going back, growing vegetables and herbs and all of those sort of.
And it was hugely successful for you, because the first lockdown, we had the best weather we've ever had in our lives.
Absolutely. Those first 6 weeks were, but that continued, Alan, right through the whole year and into the second year. We just saw, because people were at home and they were, they wanted to do something, and particularly grow your own in particular, that took off. But I suppose the biggest change I've seen in retail is, like I said to you, when I was growing up, every second premise in Castlebar was a mom and pop shop. It was family owned, family run. There weren't the big brands. You know, Dunn's came to Castlebar. That was probably the first big brand that came to town. Mm-hmm. And that was when my dad started deciding, okay, that's going to be the future of grocery, so it's time to diversify. I mean, he used to have the supermarket. He sold homebrew, all homebrew kits and so on. He sold gas heaters and gas cookers. He sold lawnmowers and chainsaws and garden plants. So he really diversified the business because he needed to, so that was terrific. So that's probably the biggest change, that the demise of the small independent. I was in Lyon in France last year with my son, and what struck me, Lyon is a relatively small city with a population of about 500,000, but people live in the city. So you've got your mom and pop shops, mm-hmm. and over that you've got 3 stories of apartments with balconies. And in the evening time, you can see the families out eating in their, and they come down to buy their produce.
Yes.
So it's the loss of, I think, that residential people living above the properties in town. Mm. That has been the demise of the town centres.
Yeah,
which is a shame to see. And really, if we could reactivate that again, it would bring the businesses back.
Even till this day, I'm hugely involved in marketing, and I like to think that I live, breathe, and eat marketing. And I know it. I'd like to think that I know it inside out. You've always been ahead of the curve, and you've always been a businessman that I've looked at and said, that's a man that gets it. Whereas other businesses will come along and they'd say, oh, I don't know now if we do that now, because we've always taken an ad out in the paper, or we've always done this. What has pushed you to do something different all the time, or to try something different?
Well, our dad, Sean, was a fantastic marketer. Like, I used to look at the stuff he was doing in the papers, and he would have encouraged me to start looking at, particularly when Midwest came on board, and looking at other avenues of marketing.
Give me an example of what he was doing.
He was any chance he got, he had a picture in the paper, he had an article in the paper. He started encouraging me to write articles for all the various papers. So at a time I was writing for the Western People, the Mayo News, the Connaught Telegraph.
Really?
Yeah, so he would have encouraged me to do all that. So any opportunity he saw to get the name out there, to get a picture in the paper. And Dad ran the business with Mam, but he was also a fantastic community worker. So he worked on the 4-day walks. He worked on the song contest. He was director of that for a number of years. So he got involved in a lot of the activities and probably learned. He used to say to me that Berger Paints at the time were sponsoring the song contest, and they put as much money into marketing their involvement,
yeah.
as they did in the prize fund. So it was maybe 5,000 of a prize fund. They put another 5 grand into actually telling people that they were involved. So, you know, he always had that attitude that you look for the opportunity to market the business. And if you can at all, do it at zero cost.
Yeah. Look for the free opportunities as
so
well.
like we used to have a float in the parade every year, a huge float in the parade in Castlebar. We used to do Westport, Castlebar, Ballina, all the shows as much as possible. So he was very much encouraging getting the name out and the importance of the brand of Horkans. And, you know, so really I suppose that was probably unconsciously, I probably had that in the back of my head all the time. And my brothers, John and Tomas, would be very good on that as well. They'd understand the brand, the importance of the brand, the name, what the brand stands for. Like we would, as a group, we would have put a lot of time into what are our values, what's our message, you know, what do we stand for. So hence the 5-year guarantee. We have a philosophy in the business that we don't use jargon, so we don't use botanical names. You know, if you get into the botanical names of plants, you're losing the customer. So you keep it to the
So know who your audience is and know how to speak to them.
Speak to them at their level. Don't be up here as being an expert and you know it all. Speak to them. Use the common language. You know, and that was very important. So we would train the staff in that as well. Okay. Like I'd often see the horticulturists coming from the Botanic Gardens to work for us. And they're all up with the Latin names and they're speaking up here.
Yes.
Whereas we have to train them, you know, that's not the way we do it. We do it this way. And, you know, because, you know, customers feel awkward asking questions sometimes. They feel, you know, that they should know more maybe than they think they know. And so they can be reluctant to ask questions. So you have to keep it simple and easy.
It's interesting because there's an electronics store that I visit quite a lot and I have that exact problem. I might go in looking at a new laptop or whatever, and sometimes I can come away from it thinking, that fella treated me like I was a bit of an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, and whilst I am a little bit ignorant to this latest laptop, there's no need to treat me like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to be, you know, so we have that philosophy, use no jargon. So we have a couple of things like that within the business that are very important to us, and we make sure that happens. And, you know, I'll be listening in on conversations that are happening, making sure that people are being talked to in a particular way.
Do you think our staff a little bit anxious when you're around?
I don't think so. They because they themselves will often come up to me and say, look, I had this customer in yesterday and they were looking for this, and this is what I said to them, what do you think? And so they'll use me as a sounding board, or they'll ring me up and say, look, I've got this question in what, you know, how do you think I should handle this? So they have no issue kind of ringing me and talking to me, or, you know, so.
You've made everything sound so positive, and everything has been fantastic since day one, and you've been pushing a lot of open doors. If I was to ask you what has been the worst day in business, or was there a day where you look back and you went, Jesus, that didn't go to plan?
I'd say probably the worst day for us was the day in our Sligo store burnt down. So we had a fire in the store, and the store in Sligo is quite small. It's completely covered. So you got polythene tunnels, you got a structure. Electrical fault happened during the day. It took off, and there were pictures on national media of the firemen carrying out the pets. We had a pet store there at the time as part of the garden centre.
Yes.
The whole building completely burnt down. So, you know, we were left with and part of, because polythene tunnels are horticultural buildings, you don't get insurance on them. So we had to foot the bill and rebuilding the whole unit. Some of it was covered by insurance, all right. And the store closed for a year. By the time we got it cleaned up and reopened and the insurance sorted out, that was probably the toughest.
Knockback.
Yeah, you know, I overall over 40 years, that's the only hiccup really we've had. We've had really a great time, and we've enjoyed it. That's the, you know, I often say to people that, you know, I speak at schools or whatever, and they, you know, what's your advice to young people would be to find your passion. Our job as parents is to find the passion that kids have, and once you have a passion like you have for comedy and podcasting and so on, I mean, it's easy.
Everything else will fall into place.
And our dad was a great man when we were young. He would send us off on, like, for example, there was a character in town, Jimmy Mangan, that used to deliver fruit. He'd go up to up to Dublin, buy his fruit, bring it back on the truck, and go around to all the shops. Dad would send us off for a day working with Jimmy Mangan to see how that worked. He sent two of the two twins, down to Wexford, down to Wicklow, down to Arklow, to the Airgas group to learn how to fix. Now they're only 14 or 15, to learn how to fix gas cookers, because he was selling them at the time. It nearly caused the unions were up in arms. It nearly caused a strike.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Who were these two young fellas?
Yeah.
But he sent myself and my older sister Bridget to Holland one year. I was only 16. She was 17 and a half, maybe 18, to work in a bulb farm, picking tulips and daffodils, and tent on your back, sleeping bag. This is back in the early mid-70s, and we worked for the whole summer in Holland with thousands of other people from all over Europe. But it was a fantastic experience for us. So he was a great man for, here's a job for you.
Where did that come from with your dad?
I don't know. Like, he came from a big family himself. He worked alongside his own parents in his mother's business. He went to the UK, and I suppose his mother had the old traditional grocery shop with the counter, and the customer came up and asked for everything.
Yeah.
And Dad went to the UK to see, probably back in the 50s, late 40s, 50s, and he saw the supermarket business, and he brought that concept back with him, and basically chucked out the old grocery, redid the building, and put in the modern supermarket.
That must have took some convincing. I'd say your grandmother
probably
kicked
did.
and screamed.
It probably did, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was very successful, and we lived over the shop, as they say, and you know, cycle messenger bikes. And
for somebody listening to this who's in business at the moment, and it doesn't have to be horticulture, like somebody who's listening to this, they're driving along at the moment, they're self-employed and they're struggling a little bit, what advice would you give them?
Well, one of the things we have always done, I suppose it's great having the various family members that we had, you know, with various different skill sets. You know, so John with his accountancy and management skills, Tomas with his engineering skills, Maritha the florist, I the horticulture. So together as a team, we worked very well, you know, and the other thing that we have done successfully is we've brought external people on. So we have, over the last number of years, we would have external people, consultants that we bring on a fairly long-term basis to ask the awkward questions.
Okay.
You want that outside perspective in your business as well. So, you know, I would say to people, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to another person in business or somebody with a different skill set to your own, to be able to ask. You know, you need somebody asking the awkward questions too. It can't be all hunky-dory, and, you know, because, you know, we all need to be questioned. We all need to be held accountable. You want fresh ideas coming into your business all the time. So that would be something. We would have had different mentors that would have sat as part of our board of directors, that would come in, look at the finances, look at the various aspects of the business, look at the skill set of the people, and advise accordingly on, you know, some people.
That's something I would do a lot. I would ask a lot of people for a lot of advice. And
Yeah.
I think in my industry, you can see people doing the same thing over and over again, thinking
Exactly.
it's the right thing.
And you get the same
And then,
result.
yeah, and then they're surrounded by 4 people who tell them that's the right thing to do, and you're doing brilliant because they're afraid to tell them otherwise.
Yeah. So you need that external, somebody that just hasn't, you know, they're having an axe to grind, and they're able to come in and ask the questions, why are you doing that? And why not? And did you consider this, or did you consider that?
Yeah.
And also we would have spent quite a lot of time looking at other businesses, networking with other garden centres, both in the UK, in Europe, here in Ireland. So we were part of the Garden Centre Association, 20 or 30 members coming together, sharing ideas, sharing figures, sharing trends. We'd go off to various shows abroad and look at examples of other businesses there. So that's very important. We do the same thing on the pet side, constantly looking at trends and what's happening. You know, the America is a great place to see the trends that are going to filter down in 2 or 3 years' time. So
Right.
it's keeping an eye on all of that.
Again, for people who are outside Mayo, they won't know that once upon a time you brought meerkats to
We
Castle
did.
Bar, and you set up a lovely meerkat
Yeah.
sanctuary in
Well,
the middle of Horkans Garden Centre.
And we had a number of the meerkats. Now they were bred in captivity. That's important to say. So they were hand reared from and born into a captivity. But we built a meerkat enclosure,
yeah.
and that became, you know, people loved to see them. And the interesting thing is that meerkats will live about 3 to 4 years longer in areas like what we built compared to in the wild.
Right.
But we have them in a number of our larger pet stores, and they were very, very popular.
Yeah. They were beautiful.
Yeah, they really were. And they have been rehomed to Photo. Photo
Really?
Island. That's where they've,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, that's, and like, we'd always have the rabbits and the hamsters and the birds and the fish.
Yeah.
And so on, and people loved to see that.
In the garden centre itself, I asked you what would be the top 3 questions you get asked all the time. Now I'm going to ask you, what would be your top 3 selling products?
Well, the zero liquid.
Oh yes, I did
Yeah.
see you selling this the whole time.
So zero,
moss
there's a great example of a product. So for years, when I trained in the Botanic Gardens, the only thing to control moss was sulphate of iron. And sulphate of iron, for any person that has used it, is a powder.
Yeah.
It's caustic, so if you get it on your hands will smell of iron. If you get it on your clothes, it'll destroy them.
Okay.
If the powder gets onto tarmac, it leaves a stain. Right, so it's a product that was terrific at killing moss, but it had a lot of downsides, and it was the only thing available for controlling moss, and that used to bug me.
Right.
I kept saying to myself, there has to be something else. So I went to the States, and I looked at what the greenkeepers were doing in America. This is maybe 10 years ago, and they weren't using sulphate of iron. They were using a completely different. It was an iron-based product, but it was what we call a chlorated form of iron. So it was a liquid form, and they were using that on their greens to keep the moss away, and it gave a lovely rich green colour.
Right.
So I got the product, I brought it back to Ireland, I got it analysed, and I got a company here in Ireland to make the product for me, and we branded it Zero. So it's Zero is a Horkans product. The name came to me in bed.
Okay. Go on, tell us that story.
So we had developed the product, and I was thinking, what am I going to call this? You know, moss off or kill moss, or here. I was looking for a simple brand name that would be easily recognised. People would also say what it does. So the idea of Zero is that you use zero moss if you use it.
Okay.
And so Zero. So we launched Zero. It took off straight away, and we've been selling it for the last 10 years now. Totally made in Ireland, sold through other garden centres as well. So we wholesale it to other garden centres. Terrific product. And the feedback from customers, if you go online and look at the social media, the comments, people they absolutely love the product, and it does what it says in the tin. I mean, it does. If you use it as prescribed and you use it on a regular basis.
Okay.
And the great thing about moss is it comes back every year.
That's good for you, bad for me.
So that has probably been one of the most successful products, Zero.
Okay.
And we then developed a range of fertilizers, lawn fertilizers under that brand as well. And we also have a product called Pack, which we developed for moss on tarmac and that kind of thing as well.
Right.
So that's probably the best selling. I mean, the plants, the hydrangeas, like we said.
Yeah.
It depends on the time of year. We're coming into the season, coming up to Mother's Day now. So plants like camellias are coming into flower. They're very popular whilst they're in flower. So customers tend to buy with their eyes. And that's why I always say to people, I mean, there's always a rush in March, April and May to come into garden centres. And that's why most gardens look pretty. Think of the flowering cherries, the flower in the springtime. Most gardens actually look really well in springtime.
Okay.
But they're devoid of colour during the summer because people aren't visiting garden centres during the summer. So if a customer comes in and there's a plant it's not going to flower till June, and one that's in full flower, the customer always goes for the plant in flower.
Really?
Always.
Yes.
They're not thinking ahead to thinking, well, yeah, I need to plant for. So I always encourage people, buy little and often. You know, don't rush in springtime and fill up the boot.
Okay.
You know, buy a couple of accounts in spring, get some in early summer, get some in midsummer, get some in. Like I talked last week about a plant that flowers through the winter. There's a lovely plant actually I have in the garden called Daphne Jacqueline Postel.
You told me a minute ago there you don't come in with big fancy names.
So, well,
What's the short name for it?
The short name is a Daphne.
There we go.
But it's a lovely story because Hillary's nursery, when I was in the Botanic Gardens, Hillary's nursery were the nursery that used to supply the Queen with all their plants. And they were up there right on a pedestal. But there's a guy working there called Postel, and he developed this Daphne, which comes from the Himalayan mountains. He developed it, and he called it after his wife, Jacqueline Postel. It starts to flower in December and flowers through till it's just gone out of flower, but the scent on it is absolutely fantastic.
Really?
Every spring, I take a couple of sprigs of it. I bring it into my wife. I'm doing this for the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And every year she smells it and she says, "Oh, that's, it's just divine."
I'm so curious
And
now.
anybody I give a sprig to, they'll all, "Oh, can I have one of those? Can you get me one of them?"
Yes.
So it's a lovely plant. So there's a winter flowering shrub that most people have in their garden because they're not visiting the garden centre in the winter.
Is it an Irish company that was supplying the Queen?
No, Hilliers are a UK.
They're UK.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Very prestigious. They were fantastic plant breeders. They came out of a book. It must have been 6 inches thick.
Right.
When I was a student, that was the Bible. So if you had to research a plant,
Okay.
we used to have to go out and learn the Latin names of plants. So
Yes,
and
yes.
I was never taught Latin in school, but I learned, and then the names mean something in Latin. So, pseudoplatanus, for example, is false plantain. So there's actually a meaning to the words as well,
Right.
which is interesting. Well,
Yeah.
it interests me anyway.
No,
But
and the reason I brought up about the Queen there is I actually met a man in Spain a few months ago who has a hand in training the King's horses in the west of Ireland.
wow,
So some of the King's horses come from the west of Ireland.
my God,
So he tells me.
right.
So if he's telling me a lie, if I told you
Which
a lie,
we
I was
probably
told.
have the best. We have the best horses in Ireland anyway. They say,
Yeah.
for a small
Now
country.
this man was really unassuming. You wouldn't think anything of him. And then got talking to him and he said, "I do this, bit of this and a bit of that." And then he turns out that he's training the King's horses.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Hillary's nurseries, they were the suppliers anyway of all the plants to.
I have to ask you, have you jumped on the robot lawnmower buzz?
I have gone through 2 of them,
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
but I'm going back to the ordinary mower. I prefer to cut my lawns.
But
to be
is
honest.
that a psychological thing or a kind of
It's more a personal thing. I like to trim the lawns, but the robotic mower, they're absolutely fantastic. I have to say, the feedback from people that have them,
Yeah.
and what they actually find is that you don't have any moss with them.
right,
If
which
you
is
put
bad
the
for
mower-
your business.
It is.
Yeah.
If you put the robotic mower on, kind of running most 10 months of the year, the juices in the small bit of grass that the mower cuts and that's left in the ground, that controls the moss.
Well, see, that's what I like about you, Paraic, is because you're giving out information there that is detrimental to your business. Do you know what I mean? But you're very genuine and honest at the same time.
Get a robotic mower and you won't have moss.
I find it very therapeutic. And
Mowing.
I'd find it very hard to buy a robot lawnmower
Yeah.
because I love getting out and I love spending the hour or two out there.
When the weather conditions are right and all that good stuff, and I'd be the same. I prefer to cut my own lawns.
Yeah.
Like you, if you look out the window there, you will see a robotic mower, but it's switched off. I
Right.
don't use it anymore.
And why have you gone through 2 of them? Did one pack in or?
No, because I got the second one for free.
All right. Hashtag gifted. Yeah.
So I said I'd just try it and thing, but no. For me, I love the mowing of the grass, keeping it neat and tidy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
I believe you've recently retired.
Well, it was
Somewhat.
it was always a goal of mine. For our dad retired at 58, so Sean he's 92 now, and he's had a fantastic retirement. And Mum is the same. Mum is she'll be 90 this year. So I've seen the way that they've embraced retirement. They're more active now than they were. Well, they were very active anyway, but they're so active at the moment and so healthy. So it was always a goal of mine to retire on my birthday, on my 60th birthday, which was a year and a half ago.
Really?
And myself and my wife sat down, we said, right, maybe in our 40s, and we said, right, I want to retire at 60, so what do I need to do? So the goal was to be debt-free, which we are, the mortgage paid off, a good pension plan, which I provided for, and to have the business in a way that the lads could take it over, take it on. They were working with me anyway, and they're only 11 months younger than I am, and they were able to I was able to step back effectively. I still do the radio because that's important, and I enjoy doing it, and we still, it's good for the business, and it's good. I, particularly like it as well. But yeah, it's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed retirement.
You didn't find it difficult or a difficult transition?
Not one bit.
Because a lot of people struggle with retirement.
They do, but I think that's a failure to plan. You need to be active. Like 3 mornings a week, I'm up at 4:45. You know, I'm very active. I'm doing things.
You do a bit of cycling.
I cycle, I fish, I go to the gym, I do a lot of walking. As you saw, I got a new dog,
Yeah.
Molly.
She's-
So she's keeping me busy.
She's wired to the moon.
Yeah. There isn't a day that probably I'm not in the garden doing something.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Yeah, yeah. I did 40 years working. I worked as a teenager as well before that. So you know, in my mind, it's, and you've only got that short window, Alan, between 60 and 80. You know, there's 20 years there where you can be pretty active. You can still throw the leg over the bike and go for a cycle.
I thought you were going to say something else there.
So it's very important, because by the time you get to 80, your body is slowing down, and
From knowing the Paraic that I know, have you actually switched off, or are you constantly looking at the next product that you could maybe hand over to the lads?
no, I'm not. I've totally switched.
Really?
Totally switched off. I don't ask about the sales figures or what's happening. The boys keep me abreast, but overall, you know, I have no interest in going back into the business or getting involved in any way.
I find it fascinating that you were able to do that.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm 41 years of age, and it'll be a long, long time before I'm ever retired. But I cannot switch off.
Yeah, but I was like that as well. I mean, you know, as I said to you, I came up with the name Zero in bed, woke up there's the name, I have the name. So I was exactly the same, working 7 days, totally consumed with the business, you know, and you have to do that in the early stages to make a business successful. You just have to put in the grind to make it happen. It ain't going to happen any other way.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I had my eye on hitting 60, making sure that my pension plan was in place, making sure the business was well structured, and you know, great team around us, but you know, so mentally I was prepared for it, and I would have no regrets. I would recommend it to anyone, but to put the plan in place and have your ducks in line.
Have you any goals or a bit of a bucket list for retirement?
Not particularly. I mean, it's really it's, you know, people say to me, how are you passing the time? And I say to them, it's not about passing the time, it's about enjoying every minute of it. So yesterday I went for an 80k cycle. It was absolutely fabulous down around, and you can take your time on the cycle. I'm not rushing. I don't have to be back for anything particular. So I don't really, Alan. No, I have good structure in my life. So I you know, there are certain things I do on particular days and so on. But overall, I'm not, you know.
Did you have any help getting into that mindset?
Well, as I said to you, we had the various mentors during, you know, over the last probably 20 years. We had different people coming into the business. So I would have learned from them as well, you know, and getting advice from them and bouncing them off. And it was always a goal of mine to retire at 60. So for 20 years, I've been thinking about it, and what am I going to do, and how am I going to step back, and, you know, what's my life going to look like? So, you know, I didn't go for kind of professional help to say, right, you know, you can go to various people that will help you with a life plan, but I had it pretty well thought out, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I'm
I'm
100%. I
surprised.
would recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised to hear that, because the last time I was in this garden room was about, I don't know, when was it? Was it 4
You were setting up your
4 years ago? We were doing a little broadcast here with Midwest Radio.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me you were going to retire, and I remember me telling you, you haven't an ocean. And I was wrong. You were right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
But you'll get to that stage yourself where, you know, and like I've had 40 years of it. It has been fantastic, but that was enough for me. You know, I don't need any more. I don't need any more of the business side of the business. I thoroughly enjoy the gardening program, I said, and doing gardening myself and chatting to people about gardening and all that sort of stuff.
What has been your biggest accomplishment or achievement in life? And it can't be a product. Like, you can't get another sales pitch in here.
Retirement.
And it can't be retirement. It has to be before retirement, and it can't be a product.
The things that I'm very proud of are the family that I've reared. I have a fantastic family. The business that we've built, myself and the Jonathan Moss and Mairead, we've built a fantastic business. We have never fallen out. We're still as close as ever. Business is business, as we say, and family is family. And we've always been successful in being able to keep those two things separate. So I suppose, you know, when we think where we started, living above a grocery shop, I'm sure our dad, now he'd never say it, but I'm sure he looks at it sometimes and thinks, my God, like, they brought it from you know, a small grocery, relatively small grocery business to where it is today with 180 people with 12 stores around the country. You know, we've survived the various recessions that we've gone through. So 40 years of business, to be still in business has been terrific. So, you know,
Yeah, to spend 40 years in business with family and not fall out is massive.
It is. It is. So that you know, we'd be very proud of that. But, you know.
And I want to give a special mention to Shane as well, who works hard there in Turla. And like, you know, you're on about your own family that you've raised. I only know Shane, and anytime you walk in, he has a word for everyone.
Oh, that's,
you know,
and everybody says that to me.
And anywhere to
the family
and the business.
He's a great man for chatting.
Yeah, probably
great
terrible
salesman.
for business.
Yeah.
But great.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, lovely to have a smile and a word for everyone.
Absolutely, and that's what's important. You know, we say in Horkans, we hire the smile and you develop the skill. So you're looking for that smile, you know, and that smile is all about a person's personality and their attitude to work and so on. So hire the smile and develop the skill.
Fair play. Paraic, thank you so much for your time
Alan.
today.
It's been
I
an
really
absolute
appreciate
pleasure.
it. If I ever am lucky enough to buy a house with a small garden, I'll be hounding you.
No problem.
We might do a little garden series.
Absolutely.
Gardening with Alan and Paraic. I'll pull you back out of retirement. I just want to say thanks to James, who has been on sound and camera here today. Thank you very much indeed to Paraic for having me. And Paraic, thanks for being so open and honest, because it's hard to get those conversations. It really is. You'll have people that'll come in here and tell you X, Y, and Z, but they might hold back on things, and you've been very open.
Yeah, that's the way we've always been. Yeah.
And
it's been a pleasure.
You're a very inspiring man, and with the help of God, I can retire at 40 and look as happy and healthy as you.
You will. Put it into the diary.
I sure will. Paraic, thanks a million.
Thanks a million.
Thanks.